Rabia, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm really excited to have you because I know that you've come up with a reading list, summer reading list for children. And I thought, wow, I love reading books, so I have to talk to you. So I'm really happy that you're here. And maybe you can talk about some of the books you have around you and tell me why you chose them for your reading list.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I did create a summer reading list, and I really wanted to center diverse Muslim voices. And so I've brought some of the books with me. There's a lot on the list. So I kind of chose the ones that I really love. So I'll hold up 3. So there's Big Red Lollipop. And I really love this one because it's really a story about sisters and, the drama and all of the things that happens between sisters and siblings. I also brought this one. It's called In My Mosque. I really love this one because it really shows the diversity of the Muslim community, as well as really expanding our ideas of what and who a Muslim is supposed to look like. So I think it's such an important message, but it's done in such a very normal, beautiful way.
And I see that there's a child in a wheelchair
there. Yeah. The child is really centered in the illustrations. And I think that really speaks volumes of this beautiful, positive representation. And so the other book I've brought is Fatima's Great Outdoors. And this story is really about a Muslim family going camping for the first time. And it really, talks about all of the trials and tribulations that, they go through as they're setting up their tent and, meeting other people and cooking their first meal outdoors. So all 3 of these books really, I think, expand the ideas of what the Muslim community is, what Muslims look like, and who Muslims are. So that was really, the idea behind the reading challenge.
And, as you were holding up these books, I looked at the authors and I saw that all of them seem to be Muslims. Was that purposeful?
Yeah, it was definitely intentional. So, the reading list was really focused on, highlighting Muslim characters, Muslim authors, Muslim illustrators. And I think that's so important, to really amplify the voices of all of these amazing people who are doing this work. So really the choices of the stories, the choices of who is writing the stories was very intentional, because oftentimes as Muslims, stories are written about us.
Yes.
And I think it's very important that we, use our positional power and our platforms to amplify Muslim voices. And, we center stories that are written by the people who are experiencing those things. So it was a very intentional choice to, center and highlight.
Yeah. And, when we write our own stories, we can make sure, we are part of the culture, right?
Yes.
So it's reflected in what the book comes out to be.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, we are the best people to talk about our own experiences. And oftentimes there are monolithic ways in which Muslims are represented. And I think to really counter and disrupt those oppressive structures, we really have to, center people who are writing their own story. So there's so much power in being able to tell your own story and to write your own story.
I noticed that when you were talking about what sort of books you chose for your list, you mentioned that there are certain tropes, like there are certain things that authors like to write about, or certain genres. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more. It was really interesting to me.
Yeah. I think, growing up, I didn't really see representation of my lived experiences, like the intricacies of my lived experience. And oftentimes the stories that I read, or, the stories that we read in school, were very single stories. And what I mean by that is they only represented us in a monolithic way. And oftentimes, they were those stories that positioned Muslims out of the West and really positioned Muslim women as being oppressed and needing to be saved. And so I think those are those stereotypes that are very prevalent. And with these stories, I really, wanted to disrupt those ideas and really show the intersectionality of the Muslim community. And I think that's where the power is, because we're not one thing, we're everything, right? So I think that was really the reasoning behind, the intentional choices and knowing that there are those tropes out there and thinking about how I could counter them through storytelling and stories. And, the most powerful thing I feel to really disrupt those tropes is to center everyday stories. And what I mean by that is just representing diverse people of diverse identities in very everyday universal experiences like, friendship, family, cooking. I really think that those universal everyday stories really, restore the humanity and dignity that those tropes rob us of. And so, I think having a story such as the Big Red Lollipop or the Red Lollipop helps us see each other in our experiences. I can relate to, I have a sister and, there's lots of fun things that we do together. And those everyday experiences that are normalized is where the power is, I think, in children. If we help our children see these everyday stories, whether they're from all different identities, that's really how I think we can really make a difference and really disrupt those very harmful tropes and single stories.
Mm-hmm. There is also a genre of story where it's telling you about the religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's teaching you aspects of the religion. What is Eid like? Or what is Ramadan like for Muslims? What do you think of those sorts of stories?
Yeah, the stories that sort of teach religious literacy. Yeah. I think as we strive to create an inclusive world and community, I think those stories are part of it. They're important because we have to know about each other to really understand each other and then to build respect. But I think for too long, we've only stayed at those stories. I think that there's a place for those stories, but it shouldn't be the only stories that we share. As a Muslim student, I shouldn't only see myself reflected during Eid. I also want to see myself reflected, during math or, science or social studies. Maybe when we're talking about friendship, I think we need to move beyond those additive approaches where we only see groups of people during specific times, Muslims only during Islamic Heritage Month, the Black community only during, Black History Month. I think we have to, move beyond that and really disrupt those additive approaches and really, move towards representing all people all the time. And I think, that's where we need to go to so that we can really build an inclusive community.
It's funny, when I was growing up, I don't remember seeing any books like this. So it's wonderful that there's this sort of plethora of books right now.
Yeah. What I think is amazing is that there are so many stories being written and there's so many more opportunities for people to write their own stories that, publishers are coming out with, because there has been historical marginalization of who gets to write whose story, who's centered, who's always writing a story every single year. So I think that there is power in, being able to tell your own story. And I would really hope that there's continuous opportunities for us to make space to tell our own stories. And I really am proud of everyone who's telling their own stories and really coming forward with books such as this.
Rabia, where would we find all of these wonderful books that you've been discussing?
Yeah, any local bookstore. I think, what's also really important is to get these books into libraries because books are very expensive. And so to really, create accessibility, I think the local library is something where we need to advocate and to, really get these books into libraries. And, those books are not only going to be good for our Muslim kids, but if we think and consider the library's role in a community, we know that all people have access to it. And so I would really encourage, checking out your bookstore, library, local library, but also school libraries. So I think really focusing on those areas that are accessible for all people.
So would you just walk into a library and say, can you carry this book? How does it work?
Yeah, I think that there is a process probably where, you can probably recommend or there's probably ways that you can, maybe fill out some forms or something like that. I think the process might be different in every space, but what I do know is that the community is listening, where, they are listening for the stories that need to be in all places. So I'm hopeful of that.
I hope people will take up your challenge, especially young people, young kids, and they'll be reading your books.
That would be amazing.
And I guess they can find out about your books on your website, right?
Yes. They can download the reading challenge and get to it.
Thank you, Rabia, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.